is 0.3 out of 5. But God knows we should trust that guy. Thank you so much, Gordon Johnson. I'm really afraid. You sound like an expert to me. Who did that marketing for us, by the way? That solar's going to save the world. It was Time Magazine. It was the media. This is perfect. This is Time Magazine as a whole. If there are people out there busting their asses, making the actual effort to change the world in ways that they don't like, it must be due to corruption. Hi there, welcome to Real Sales Dynamics, where we break down in-field sales footage to get you better at door knocking. We're actually fresh off of Door to Door Con, an amazing event in Salt Lake City, Utah, where I got to meet up with a lot of the top pioneers in the solar industry as a whole. And this article came out from Time. The rooftop solar industry could be on the verge of collapse. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone had their own hot takes at the convention, and I thought, why not take a crack at it real quick? And importantly, on February 12th, if you're interested in solar sales at all, if you're already an active sales rep and you want to be trained by the best in the industry, we're going to be doing a Real Sales Dynamics event in Tampa, Florida, again, February 12th. The information is down below in the Eventbrite link. We'll be giving away tons of stuff. There'll be food, a lot of prizes, everything you could possibly imagine, and more. See you guys, February 12th. Now, let's get to it. So, quick thing about Time Magazine, and more importantly, who's this author? Alana Semuls. Semuls. We'll go with Semuls. Sure. I'm sure she couldn't pronounce my name right either. So an interesting thing about Time Magazine, just for you guys, they've been around for literally decades and decades and decades, and they've actually written another article about solar in the past that was, to say the very least, defamatory. Now, you may be thinking, this is Time Magazine, guys. They've been around since the early 1900s. Obviously, this is going to be an unbiased case regarding solar. Time Magazine, the same people who in 1940 stated that Joseph Stalin, unlike Benito Mussolini, was doing many positive things for the world, like killing 30 million people, who also stated within Time Magazine that we should go to the Iraq War, Syria War, Afghanistan War, basically every single war you could possibly think of. Ooh, I should mention, by the way, this may be our last video, because I'm going to say a lot of things on here as a whole may make advertisers a little unhappy, but that's okay, guys, because just like us, Time Magazine doesn't really like when people make money anyway. So let's get right over to it. A decade ago, someone knocking on your door to sell you solar panels would have been selling you solar panels. Now, they're probably selling you financial product, likely a lease or a loan. Do you know why we do that, by the way, guys? Why we don't just try to get people to sign up for $30,000 to $50,000 cash deals? Because it's really expensive. And due to a lot of the adjustments in the economy, including rolling inflation, something that Time Magazine doesn't seem to like to cover, many people can't afford to just buy systems outright. So we're able to use a variety of different partners in order to eliminate people's utility bills and get them solar at a very, very low payment a month. Mary Ann Jones, 83, didn't realize this had happened to her until she had received a call last year from GoodLeap, a financial technology company, saying she owed $52,000 for solar panel loan that expires when she's 106. It costs more than she originally paid for the house. Great point. They're bringing up how you probably shouldn't do loans for 83-year-old women. You know what we should do instead? A lease. Do you know what the most tragic thing about the story is, besides the fraud? The fact that she's 83 and she's just getting solar now. That means she's already donated at least $150,000 to the utilities with getting nothing back for it. So in 2022, she says a door-to-door salesman from the company Solgen Construction, they are naming the companies, guys, show up at her house on the outskirts of Fresno, California, pushing what he claimed was a government program affiliated with her utility to get her free solar panels. It's totally possible that he used that kind of lingo. And guess what? Here at Real Sales Dynamics, we make sure that you guys have transparent, honest pitches that you can learn from our company and from this channel as a whole that will prevent you from the missteps that many other door knocking companies have, where they start to overpromise and underdeliver and do not understand how the programs work before they try to go out and sell them. So if you guys want an honest, real pitch, make sure to see some of our other videos. At one point, he had touched his tablet device, she says, but he never said she was signing a contract with Solgen or a loan document with GoodLeap. I've heard this before. I've heard this claim before from customers. I never signed anything, right? When I'm dealing with customer complaints from other reps, things like that. And 9 times out of 10, it's not true. It's literally in your inbox. Here's the problem. Unbeknownst to Jones, the salesman used yoursolarguyyoujosh at gmail.com as her purported email address. That, of course, was not her email address. Time, I'm with you. And your solar guy, Josh, that's a no-no, okay? If you are literally putting down your own email address as their email address, and it's your solar guy, Josh, that's bad, right? This is obviously fraudulent tactics. And they're going to bring up a couple more fraudulent tactics in here, as we will see. I just have a question for you, though. A little question for you. Who killed more people, the solar industry or Joseph Stalin? Just a wonder. What did more damage? Lying about mad cow disease, avian flu, other diseases that we can't mention on YouTube without us getting a strike on it, and a litany of lies about wars over the course of the last 70 years? Or your solar guy, Josh? Which killed more? See, this is the question I'm having just about time as a whole, because you will find this throughout all of time's history. Whenever a new innovative product comes out that allows people without college degrees to go out and make hundreds of thousands of dollars every single time, they attack that industry as ruthlessly as they possibly can. Why do they do that? Because these are written by journalists who went to school for this, and they love attacking people who are successful, especially people who are successful outside of the normal path to success. So if you go get your doctorate, your PhD, and everything else, and you go make $150,000 a year after you get $300,000 in a debt, time's gonna love you. If you, on the other hand, are an 18-year-old kid who grew up in the Midwest, whose parents never actually went to college, took up Uber driving for a second until you found out about door knocking, make $300,000 a year, you are an enemy to the state. You are an enemy to the media. You're an enemy to time as a whole. They love trying to take down people who are successful, and they're going to do it by using little stabs. Look at the little misses over here. She did something wrong happen. They're going to try to attack you as much as possible. But again, did Josh kill more people than Stalin? I think we know the answer to that. That, of course, was not her email address. She's on a fixed income of $960 a month and cannot afford the loan she said she was tricked into signing up for. She's now fighting both Solgen and Goodleap in court. Solar customers across the country say that salespeople obscure the specific terms of the financial agreements and cloud the value of the products they peddle. Solar customers across the country. That phrase, right? This is a journalistic twist of phrase. How many customers? There are millions of solar customers, right? So we're talking 1%, 0.1%, 0.01%, Joseph Stalin. What kind of numbers are we talking about in this? And if you use huge, bold claims like solar customers outside the entire country, you have no sense of the actual numbers here. Related court cases are starting to pile up. I've been practicing consumer law for over a decade, and I've never seen anything like that we're seeing in the solar industry right now, says Kristen something, who represents Jones, and says her firm gets multiple calls every week from a potential client with similar stories. You guys might know companies like Morgan & Morgan or other storm chase companies or ambulance chasing companies out there. This is one of them, and there's tons of them. There's plenty of lawyers out there who want to go after big solar companies because they are slightly unregulated, even though they are regulated to a certain extent, and they want to paint solar with the broadest brush that they possibly can. So it goes on. Angry customers aren't the only reason the solar industry is in trouble. You guys are in trouble. Dad's mad. Some of the nation's biggest public solar companies are struggling to stay afloat as questions arise over the viability of the financial products they sold to both consumers and investors to fund their growing operations. This part's fun. These looming financial problems could topple the residential solar industry at a time when solar is supposed to be saving the world. Supposed to be saving the world. Who did that marketing for us, by the way? That solar's going to save the world. It was Time Magazine. It was the media. They're the ones who said we're going to save the world. Solar reps don't say those things. That's you. That's you painting with a broad brush again, right? Though solar represented just 3.4% of the nation's electricity generation in 2022, studies show that rooftop solar could eventually meet residential electricity demand in many states if deployed widely, freeing American homes from dependency on fossil fuels. To help speed adoption, the Inflation Reduction Act extended a 30% tax credit for residential solar and battery installations. This is true. It actually increased from 24% to 30%. And what's weird is, with that bigger government handout, the exact same time that was happening, inflation also skyrocketed and interest rates also skyrocketed. And when those interest rates skyrocketed, that led to a momentary decline in the increase of solar sales. We're going to get into this in a second here, and they're going to bring up that solar sales are declining in this massive way. No, they just didn't increase in 2023 as much as it increased in 2022. That's not that it lowered, it still was going up. And of course, there's going to be that blip. I'm sure there's another article on here about how refinances probably declined as well. And that means no one's going to have a home by 2030. Still, the residential solar industry is floundering. Floundering. Look, you can think of it as like a fish. Oh, no, no, I'm out of the water. In late 2023 alone, more than 100 residential solar dealers and installers in the U.S. declared bankruptcy, according to Roth Capital Partners, 6 times the number in the previous 3 years combined. Roth expects at least 100 more to fail. Ooh. The 2 largest companies in the industry, Sunrun and Sunnova, both posted big losses in their most recent quarterly reports. And their shares are down 86% and 81%, respectively, from the peaks in January 2021. Sunnova is under the microscope for having received a $3 billion loan from the DOE, Department of Energy, while facing numerous complaints about troubling sales practices that targeted low-income and elderly homeowners. Do you know why solar reps a lot of times chat with low-income homeowners? Because they could benefit from, instead of spending $300 a month, now spending $150 a month. Do you know who else could benefit from that? People on fixed income, like elderly folks, who instead of spending $300 a month are now spending $150 a month. At no point in this entire article do they ever cover the fact that utility prices have skyrocketed across the nation. Literally not once. Like in places like in Hillsborough County, where low-income homes are spending 12% of their annual income on utilities. Another solar giant, SunPower, saw shares plunging 41% on December 18th after it said that may not be able to continue to operate because of debt issues. All of this is true. All of this is true, right? A lot of these TPO products, third-party owned, leased products, have been going down. Does that mean the whole world's going to end? No, a lot of the market is down. It ebbs and flows, my friends. Sunlight Financial, a big player in the solar finance space, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in October. It also faced a lawsuit alleging that the company made false and misleading statements about its financial well-being. 100% true. I can't go a whole thing into Sunlight Finances, but they made some claims that weren't exactly factual to their investors, right? Something that has happened many times in many different industries as a whole. For instance, Time Magazine, Joseph Stalin. Go ahead and jump to that one. At the root of these struggles is a complicated financial engineering that helped companies raise money, but that some investors and analysts say was built on a framework of lies or at least exaggerations. Okay, so now they're going to go into a lot about how solar leasing works, and this is where they get some of it right. Since at least 2016, big solar companies have used Wall Street money to fund their growth. Wall Street. Look at that. It's nasty. Wall Street. This financialization raised the consumer costs of the panels and led companies to aggressively pursue sales to make the cost of borrowing Wall Street money worth it. National solar sales companies essentially became finance companies that happened to, wow, look at this. You know what's really funny, Garrett? This thing keeps flipping around because there's so many ads on this page. I wonder if they're having monetary issues because no one's actually reading these articles except for solar reps. Getting back to it, national solar companies are essentially becoming finance companies that happen to sell solar, engaging in calculations that may have been overly optimistic about how much money the solar leases and loans actually bring in. You know who's probably overly optimistic? Time Magazine. You know what they did recently? They had a whole mass of firings. Weird. I guess not everyone is as smart as Time Magazine. I've often heard solar finance and sales compared to the Wild West due to the creativity involved, says Jamie Johnson, the founder of Energy Sense Finance. He's been studying the residential solar industry for a decade. It is a Silicon Valley mantra of break things and let the regulators figure it out. If you wait for regulators in cases, you never actually innovate as an industry. This is how every single industry has gotten big. Uber being one of them, a massively successful company. Right? They broke all of the laws in all of the areas. They grew substantially, and they lessened the amount of drinking while driving across the entire nation in a way that Mothers Against Drunk Driving and cops could never do, or Time Magazine, Joseph Stalin, couldn't do in that entire amount of time. They broke things and then let regulators figure it out. And what ended up happening? They massively succeeded, and a lot of people ended up getting really, really good gigs where they're being paid a substantial amount of money. As much as solar? No. But then again, the way to become an Uber driver is significantly less difficult than becoming a successful solar representative. Next one here. How financialization raised the cost of rooftop solar. Residential solar has always faced a big impediment to growth. Installing and maintaining solar panels is expensive, and few consumers want to spend tens of thousands of dollars in cash to pay up front for what was a relatively untested product. True. To get around this problem, a company called Solar City came up with a new model in the early 2010s. Big hats to you, Solar City, for revolutionizing the solar space. Then Elon Musk kind of making it worse. Okay, leasing solar panels to customers, allowing them to pay little to no upfront cost. Companies like Sunrun quickly followed. By 2014, the third-party owned, also known as TPO, kind of leased solar accounted for 70% of total residential installations. Besides enabling sales, there were other, even bigger financial benefits of this practice for SolarCity. And if you guys don't know this about how TPO products work, this is a good 3 paragraphs muddled in between a bunch of garbage. Since the company, not the consumer, owned the solar panels, SolarCity could claim the hefty 30% tax credit for solar panels the government approved of. And so what happened, I'll explain here, but then you offload those tax credits to companies who actually have to pay a lot in taxes, like Google and Goldman Sachs, right? And that helps cover their costs. So SolarCity, other innovations, was to package together thousands of customers' leases and sell them to investors in asset-backed securities, which enabled the company, whoa, you can't bracket that amount of stuff, okay, which enabled the company and others that followed suit to move debt off their balance sheet. Investors liked buying these asset-backed securities because they had higher rates of return than government bonds and were perceived as relatively low risk. The assumption was that homeowners would make the monthly solar lease payments to keep the electricity on. It didn't help that the securities made investor portfolios more climate friendly. By 2017, the sale of solar asset-backed securities by companies including SolarCity and Sunrun had reached $1 billion. $1 billion. However, these financial innovations also increased the pressure on companies to grow quickly. Solar companies needed lots of new customers in order to package the loans into ABS. It is genuinely hard for these national businesses to maintain profitability. Okay, public companies especially faced intense scrutiny from investors who expected double-digit quarterly growth, right? This can be the problem of growth. When you need to continue to grow at a certain level and you consistently need more income in order to cover your debt, then you have to continue to grow. And so what do? They have to start paying reps to aggressively sell those products. Right. SolarCity ran out of money in 2016 and was acquired by Tesla, but the problems created by its expensive model have persisted. Right, it says Tesla did not respond to a request for comment. You know what's interesting with this? They don't even bother to mention the fact that they're still having these issues because when Tesla bought SolarCity, right, they took them out of bankruptcy. They fired all of their sales representatives. And those very sales representatives then left. SolarCity at that point was responsible for, I believe, 36% of total solar installations in the country. It dwindled down from 36% down to 2%. Right? They were 36%, then went all the way down to 2% when he fired all the reps. Weird. Those guys then went on to work for Sunrun, Vivint, and a bunch of other companies who ended up becoming bigger. Even today, about 1/3 of the upfront cost of residential solar system goes to intermediaries like sales and financing people. In Germany, where installation is done locally and there are few intermediaries, the typical residential system costs about 50% less than it costs in the US. The upfront cost of the system is stupidly high, says some guy. After growing 31% in 2021 and 40% in 2022, residential solar will only grow by 13% in 2023 and then contract 12% in 2024. That is an estimation that it will go down to 12%. We're not done with 2024 yet, according to predictions from the research firm Wood Mackenzie. If you guys want to know who the most overpaid BS consultation firm is in the entire country, look up Mackenzie. But I'm so glad that Time Magazine, Joseph Stalin, is a big fan of them and they're trusting their reports. They have made numerous mistakes, not only as far as predictions, but what things to invest in for large-scale companies over the course of the last 20 or so years, throwing down millions of dollars and billions and billions of dollars into the trash can and then lighting it on fire and rinsing or repeating while stating, well, at least our guys went to Yale. In part, that's due to the higher interest rates than industry has ever faced. In addition, recent legislative changes in California reduced the amount of homes that can earn from sending power back to the grid, making solar less appealing financially. Other states are following California's lead. Yeah, let's do that. Let's ruin solar by getting rid of that metering. Next thing here, residential solar representatives dispute the claim that the industry is in trouble. Though installations will decline in 2024, the number of homes with rooftop solars will increase from 4 million today to 10 million by 2030, according to the head of the Solar Energy Industries Association. High interest rates and policy changes might not be a huge problem if the big solar companies weren't already burning through money and needing to take out even more debt, which in and of itself is getting more and more expensive. In their most recent earnings report, Sunrun lost $1 billion in last quarter, while Sunnova said that one risk to its future growth is its dependency on raising money from third-party investors. As Travis something, who has been covering the solar industry for more than a decade for the Motley Fool notes, with all these companies, you are on a financing treadmill. which is awesome until the treadmill stops. The lies that underpin consumer loans. Meanwhile, the pressure for fast sales may have led some companies to look the other way when salespeople obscure the terms of solar panel leases and loans they were selling in order to close a deal. Consumer lawyers have made allegations about salespeople fudging consumer income on loan applications so they could qualify, telling them they'd get a tax refund for solar panels even if their income wasn't high enough, and sending important documents to fake email addresses so consumers wouldn't see them and protest. Hey, I'm with you. There's absolutely been reps who did that. That's just factually accurate. Also happens in car sales and in mortgage sales. And you know where they really fudge the numbers? Government, when they lost $3 trillion over the course of this last couple of years. But you know, who needs to cover that stuff? Because your solar guy, Josh, he's the problem. Next one up, they're going to give us another anecdote about a customer. Jesus Hernandez, 53, says a salesman from Southern Solar called him in 2019 with a pitch that installing solar panels cut his monthly electric bill to as low as $50 a month. Hernandez was paying around $500 a month. They're going to do a whole other thing about how they signed him up for this and they lied. And that happens. And they also explain in there, loan companies add on dealer fees or finance charges onto loans. Do you know why they do this? Do you know why there's dealer fees on loans? So let me go to a customer and I'm going to sell him a solar loan, and all he cares about, he doesn't care about the total amount. I'll draw it both. 3% interest loan. Is money 3% right now? No, it's not 3% right now, right? It's 8 to 10%. That's how much money costs. So in order to get that 3% interest loan for that solar loan, they add on finance charges. Some companies add on 25% finance charge. Those companies tend to have higher requirements for credit scores, meaning that there's less overall risk to lend out those people money. Other companies like GoodLeap allow more consumers to go solar than normal because their credit requirements are lower. In turn, they have higher finance charges on their loans. It's a cost-benefit analysis. If I'm going to loan out money to higher risk people who may not pay me back, I'm going to make sure I make more money on these loans. That's the hidden lie about finance charges. Really crazy, right? And numerous of these finance companies actually offer options at 8% or 10% where there are none of these finance charges. And many customers, based on their choice, choose to go for the lower interest ones instead. You see, that's how consumer choice works. Unlike taxes, where they just take them and they don't have to give you anything back. It's amazing. All right, so let's go here. This next portion here, I don't believe is true. And I've never heard it at all within the solar industry. This is essentially fraud. And they have one quote from some recruiter from a company that you've never heard of in order to justify their claims. Convincing a customer to sign up for financing is lucrative for the companies. And some door-to-door sales people have contracts that pay them extra every time they convince customers to sign up for a finance deal. I've never seen that. I have seen dozens of installer contracts. I've never seen a single one ever state that. Quote, every deal that we sell that's financed, the lending company basically gives us a kickback. Said a recruiter on a public Zoom call in October trying to attract new salespeople to work for a company called TST Pros. That would be a weird recruiting line anyway. Like literally, that doesn't make any sense. Someone wouldn't necessarily want to work for your company because you get a financing kickback when you think about the actual commissions you're making on projects anyway. So this just seems ridiculous. That kickback is on top of an average of $7,000 commission per deal, the recruiter said. Of course, those costs get passed along to the consumers too. Do you know why we get paid so much? Because our job is hard. We're not guaranteed a amount of money just for BSing the public like writers are at Time magazine. Right? We didn't have to go to special school or anything else. We're paid in direct proportion to the problems we're capable of solving. That is the beauty of sales. The more difficult it is to sell that product, i.e. the more skeptical the product or the newer the product is, so the public is therefore skeptical, the more challenging it is to sell that product, the more you are paid by those companies because you are worth it. I am paid the amount I'm paid because I'm in the top 1% of the 1% of people who sell this particular product in the country. Therefore, I get the gross amount of money. And the people who are not good at selling this product make no money, right? It's called capitalism. I know Joseph Stalin doesn't approve, but it's pretty cool when it's made this whole world work. Consumers don't catch these extra costs in part because salespeople often present documents to potential customers on tablets and phones. Make it easy to skip over the fine point. Okay, do you know who also does that? Mortgage companies, when they have you sign 136 different documents in order to get a house. Or Apple, right? Whenever you sign the agreement. You know what's really funny is if you go to a Time Magazine, right, and try to subscribe to them, they expect you to read their 32-page document before you agree to subscribe. Has anyone ever read that? The answer is no. If you were to actually look at the amount of contracts that you've signed just to use every single app on your phone, you would be reading for the next 35 years. But it's solar companies. They're the problem. Marianne Jones' situation is not unusual. Homeowners sometimes told that they're tapping their finger on iPad to get a quote from a loan company, but salesmen are in fact signing them for a loan. Except for the fact that what GoodLeap literally says, you are signing loan documents at the top of it. But whatever. These finance companies are well aware that salespeople are taking advantage of electronic devices to hide documents from consumers, says Andrew Miltz, probably a communist, right? Few of these solar cases have yet made it to court, in part because of the binding arbitration requirements in many of the loans and leases. But some recent developments make lawyers hopeful that their clients won't have to pay these loans. For example, last November, after just 2 days of testimony, a jury awarded Jesus Hernandez $500,000, and a California judge denied GoodLeap's legal motions to have Marianne Jones' case resolved by arbitration. In some ways, the current situation in the residential solar market is analogous to the subprime lending crisis that set off the Great Recession on a smaller scale. We knew they were going to do it, guys. They're going to bring up the mortgage crisis, something that Time Magazine, by the way, didn't cover till afterwards. You'd think with all this journalistic vigor and everything else that they were doing when they were telling us we should go into every single war, that they would have bothered doing a little bit of due diligence. But hey, who am I? I'm not a journalist. Like a subprime lending crisis, some companies issued loans to people who could not or would not pay them. Like the subprime lending crisis, thousands of these loans, and in solar cases, also leases, were packaged sold to investors. Right? This is how investments are done. Anyway, the Great Recession was driven largely by the fact that people stopped paying their loans, and they're going to jump into how Sunnova's asset-backed securities were approaching 5% delinquency in the fall, something that they have actually been working on pretty significantly in order to be able to handle. For instance, now with Sunnova, in order to be able to even get a lease, you have to set up for auto pay at that time. The firms that grade these asset-backed securities have long said delinquencies would be low because rooftop solar customers had high credit scores. The problem is that they appear not to have considered that even customers with good credit scores may not want to pay for solar panels they were told would be free. They're assuming here that every single person is saying that it's free. A phrase that I almost never hear in solar as a whole, and it's explained as this. You're paying this amount now, we're going to cover the cost for the installation of the system, and now you're just going to be paying this for your solar payment, whether it's a lease or a loan, and you'll pay a small amount for a grid charge depending on your utilities. Really crazy. And finally here we have Tom Demonsky, a consumer attorney who, guys, all those consumer attorneys, they're really looking out for what's best. Says no rating agency is actually going in and checking what actually happened at the time of signing. They're just looking at the data. Come on, man. I'm literally trying to give you guys all the plugs, and your website keeps reloading and then sending me more ads. I wonder if every single one of these ad companies has been audited by them as well. What a piece of article. No rating agency is actually going in and checking what actually happened at the time of signing. Don't use the phrase actually twice in a sentence. They're just looking at the data put forth about these loans. Right? So far, national regulators have not taken much action against solar panel installers and the companies that finance solar loans. There's one exception. In 2021, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, required a financial company called Green Sky to refund or cancel $9 million in loans to thousands of customers who reported not authorizing them. Green Sky's business model is similar to that of Mosaic and GoodLeap. Salesmen show up at a potential core customer's door, promising them home improvements, encouraging them to take out a loan at the tap of a few buttons. If you ask solar companies about these allegations, they'll say that unhappy customers are a tiny percentage of their total portfolio. GoodLeap, for instance, says it has a good reputation with homeowners and that it has more than 1 million customers, but is currently named in just 95 lawsuits. Right? Love that. 1 million customers, but there's 95 lawsuits. Therefore, they are the worst company in the world. Sunnova says it has a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to salespeople who take advantage of vulnerable people and investigates allegations that arise, terminating salespeople when necessary. Sunnova also emphasized that each ABS has additional protections built in to protect investors from defaults. Even if none of the consumer cases succeeded in court, some Wall Street analysts say that solar companies' questionable accounting around the long-term value of the systems they sell could come back to haunt them if regulators take actions. For a solar company to get a tax credit for the panels, at least to consumers, it has to tell the IRS how much it thinks the leases are worth based on potential future costs and revenues. As early as 2016, a researcher at MIT's Energy Initiative estimated that such companies were overstating the value by as much as 50%. Issued a research reporting accusing Sunrun of bamboozling the IRS by inflating the value of its tax credits. You know, usually when someone just says 50%, they're full of it. That's not based on any real number. They're just saying 50%. I don't know. Let's say 50%. Based on what facts? It sounds too expensive. Do you know what the costs are? No. Do you know how much this normally costs? No. It's 50% too high though, because I'm a researcher. Sunrun itself has disclosed in investor filings that is in the midst of an IRS audit. One Wall Street analyst, Gordon Johnson, alleges that Sunrun has claimed $40 billion in tax subsidies it didn't deserve. Let's look up Gordon Johnson. Let's have some fun. On tipranks.com, which does research on stock analysts and stock tips, he is rated out of 5 stars, 0.3. I didn't even know this is going to come up. Okay, so the guy who's calling out Sunrun for mismanaging funds and supposedly lying about stuff, who's a stock analyst that we should trust, review online is 0.3 out of 5. But God knows we should trust that guy. Thank you so much, Gordon Johnson. I'm really afraid. You sound like an expert to me. Still, if the IRS finds that Sunrun and other solar companies manipulated tax returns, it could lead to significant financial problems in the industry. The real risk is the cash flows are not there, says Johnson, whose equity firm, GLG Research, has a 0.3. That's worse than Sunrun's ratings. All right, so the future of residential solar. The broad problem facing residential solar and financing companies are already causing some pain in the forms of layoffs. California alone lost 17,000 solar jobs in 2023. Do you know why? Because Gavin Newsom decided he had enough solar and they cut off net metering. A lot of those reps switched to other states. Hi, my name is Carlos. I live in Florida. According to the California Solar and Storage Association, there are ripple effects in the industry. Enphase Energy, which makes microinverter solar panels, said in December it was laying off 10% of its work amidst softening demand, right? Slight dip to big rise. It could get a lot worse before it gets better, with not just lost jobs, but near total collapse of the current systems. Some analysts, who are a bunch of liars, national players are going to have a fall apart for the residential solar to become affordable in the U.S. Other analysts think the solar industry will rebound after a few tough years. They're not worried about alleged fraud. If there were so many unhappy customers out there, says Davis, the Wood Mackenzie analysts, the industry would be taking actions. Finishing up here, over the past few years, a handful of people got rich off Americans who were told they could simultaneously save money and save the planet. They did. I have over 1,000 customers out there whose bills were nearly eliminated or got brought down to anywhere between $10 and $15 and are now spending 50% less than they were currently spending on electricity. And there are hundreds of thousands of such cases. This is why people give referrals. If it was all a scam, people wouldn't be recommending them to each other. But they don't mention any of that. The idea that we need to convince tens of thousands of Americans who can't afford to put solar panels on their rooftops shifts the responsibility from addressing the climate crisis from the entities who could really make a difference. Big companies and governments, for example. This is perfect. This is Time Magazine as a whole. If there are people out there busting their asses, making the actual effort to change the world in ways that they don't like, it must be due to corruption. But when the government seizes your assets, takes your money, and puts it into a bunch of investments that make 0 sense while blowing up people across the world, then they love you. Joseph Stalin. And that is the major source of this entire thing. All of the investors and analysts that they bring up in this entire publication, if you actually review them and look them up online, are fraudsters. Is there actual cases of malfeasance within the solar industry? Of course, there's a lot of money to be made here, and there's always going to be snake salesmen they're going to find every now and then. This never helped out anyone, and it was just scamming millions of people. Then people wouldn't be calling my phone all day trying to give them referrals because I got rid of their electricity bills. Sorry, Time Magazine. I'm imagining that the only people who are going to be reading this are our audience because I unfortunately hyperlinked into it. But we did make sure to put it through a proxy server so you won't get any of the hits. Because Time, I think you have enough money. And I think Joseph Stalin would also agree. And if you liked this channel, if you liked this video, make sure to leave a comment below, something outrageous that you saw within this article. Give us your thoughts and your feelings regarding it. Make sure to click subscribe below and click one of these 2 videos. YouTube thinks you're going to like it a lot.